Oh my god, I'm an over-characterized whiny person at the start of the video just to try and grab your attention, and I don't know anything about game plans and character strengths and weaknesses at all. Wah! Yeah, listen, give me a break. We're going to talk about strengths, weaknesses, and game plans. Let's go. Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome to Guilty Gear. Today we're going to be talking all about how to set up a game plan, but also just sort of how to frame some matches in your head mentally to make them simple, make them easier to understand and easier to digest. We're going to begin with my character, Milia, because Milia actually has handily some very, very obvious win conditions that we're going to be talking about, and some less obvious losing conditions as well. Now, in terms of win conditions, all a win condition means is that your character's weaknesses are minimized, your character's strengths are maximized, and you're basically at a point where the game is just running in your favor. It's not necessarily that, the moment you hit the situation, you win the game, but it's where your character will just really flourish and shine. And conversely, losing conditions can be thought of as the opposite, though, where your weaknesses are maximized and where you just are going to have a really difficult time doing anything with your chosen character. With Milia, her win condition is obvious. It's this. Everything I do when I play Milia is in service of trying to get this. 2D into H-Disc. That's all I'm looking for. All this fancy air movement, jumping around and sort of bouncing back and forth and trying to find clever ways in. All of this is in service to land a kick, which then gives me the 2D, which then gives me the disc. There are other discs, but honestly, these discs mostly serve to get me a little bit more damage or to try and get me in positions where I can get this other disc more reliably. Ideally, I want to land this. In a pinch, I will settle for the budget version, which is this. The usefulness of this knowledge, though, comes in when I land this victory condition and then I promptly lose it, because this is one of the weaknesses, quote-unquote, of Milia, which is if I do my bread and butter combo, we get a wall break and we reset to neutral. My win condition, it goes poof, it goes up in smoke, and suddenly I am back in neutral. This is one of Milia's lose conditions. It's a strange thing to say, but ground in neutral is Milia's lose condition. I do not want to fight people on the ground face to face. It is up to my opponent to make sure that I can't do that. Kai is actually quite good at it with this jump K. Low committal button, great range on it. Poke, 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 can jail me back down to the ground, and then he can force me to fight on the ground. Also things like dash back heavy and things like that can sort of make it difficult to advance in the air. He also has great anti-airs to kind of keep me penned down. So my character, Milia, it's kind of feast and famine constantly, where I am constantly being pushed back to a position where I don't necessarily want to fight. Looking for budget versions of my win condition and then occasionally getting my actual win condition set up. But at the end of the day, Milia players only want one thing, and it's disgusting. And it's this. The point of the win condition is just kind of to demonstrate this. Like, if you ask any Milia player, how do I block the H-Disc mix? The answer is you don't. You can't block this. That's not propaganda. What we're saying when you say you can't block this is you are making a guess at this point. You don't know what I'm going to go for. You have to make a read. You have to make some kind of guess and figure out what it is I'm going to do to you to try and stop that happening, in which case we reset to a pressure string where I can then try and get you into a mix, which I can then try and get a throw or a knockdown and try and reset the situation. I also sometimes see people ask, sometimes when I land a disc, why do I sometimes go into this string? The answer is this gives me a budget disc at the end of it, which it's not my win condition, but it's close to it, and it kind of works out where I can reset that pressure. Let's talk through everyone's favorite powerhouse, Soul Bad Guy. What's his win condition? Well, he's on the screen. No. Bad mentality, don't think like that. Soul has a actually pretty clear win condition, and that's just when he's pressuring you. Soul lives to just kind of push in, and especially in the corner. Let me set Kai to block. Now, sure, you can give the brain dead answer, say Soul's win condition is when he's comboing you, but honestly, Soul's win condition is when he is in this position here. Close enough to close slash. From this option, he has a ton of different things he can do, most commonly being this one. But honestly, Soul just wants to have this position, basically. He wants you in the corner, where he can pressure you forever and make you guess all kinds of different options, and try and force you to make a move. You have to try and contest him at some point, or you're just going to explode. So you need to challenge him, and that's part of his lose condition as well, conversely. It's a weird thing to say, but, well, Soul has answers. Basically, you might see this string quite a lot, for example, if you fight Soul. So there's a big-ass gap between this and this. From far enough away, the key is it has to be far enough away, Kai has plenty of time to jump out. I can also try and do it with this, but again, has to be like a certain distance away. If I'm too close, it's not going to work. This is also the hard part about dealing with Sol, in that he has a big burden of knowledge upon him. There's a couple of things I can teach you straight away. First of all, this is negative. Don't let him get away with this. If you block this, you can absolutely punish it. Like, you can see that if I try and jump, I jump way behind Kai. It is your turn. Take your turn. The other one is this. He is technically negative after he lands this, but it's only like -3. And if you know anything about Sol, you know he has this button here, which is a 3-frame normal. It's incredibly powerful, converts into massive damage. You don't want to challenge this. The answer to this, if he lands close to you, really close to you, and you can kind of get a feel for how close he's going to land to you, with enough practice and enough time, grab him out of it, throw him, take your turn. Yes, he's powerful, but try and lab out a couple of options, and you can start finding cracks in his offense. Sol, he's strong, there's no getting around that fact, but he does have weaknesses. The downside of those weaknesses, of course, being if you guess wrong, well, you explode and you die. Going to a more extreme example now. Hey, guess what Axel's win condition is? It's just being all the way over here, where he can just use these big ass buttons. That one, that one, that one. Where is it? That one. Right, he wants to be in a position where he can just do this all day to you. Okay, maybe not that. But he wants to just kind of try and do this all day to you and blow you up and keep you out with all his big buttons and all his big ass normals. And he's happy in this position. You know Axel's not happy? Here. You get an Axel like this, spend, spend, spend. And this is how zoners traditionally have existed no matter what. Is you've got to use your health as a resource to spend getting back in. Do not be afraid to take little bits of damage here and there, because honestly, if he just juggles you all the way back out, it's not the end of the world if he manages to pull that off. I think the string is something like that, and then he like hits you on the floor as well. Never feel bad about taking damage getting in on a zoner, because once you're in, you must do everything in your power to stay in. Do not be flimsy. Do not let him just like jump and dash out. Do not let him just run away somehow. He is going to want to spend his burst. He's going to want to spend his meter. He's going to want to do as much as he can to break free. So you absolutely must. Wow, block actually just countered it. You must be willing to spend resources and spend your material that you gained, hopefully on the way in, to keep him in this position. It's an obvious statement, but it bears saying. Like, all that frustration you have when you're fighting a zoner, and I frequently see this on my stream, you know, I'm fighting an Axel and people are like, oh man, I hate fighting Axel, or this looks like hell. Like, oh, it's so frustrating. I don't mind too much, because I know that once I'm in his face, he's going to die, and I'm going to make sure he does. Some characters are a little bit more confusing. Zato is definitely one of those characters. His win condition is a little bit complicated, but it's basically just in a situation, if I remember right, is it this? No. But basically he wants to be mixing you up in some way, where he's got, especially Eddie behind you, pushing you into him, and you're forced to block Eddie and Zato at the same time, which enables him to get a lot of different mixes up. You'll see a lot of Zato's use dust. I think the command grab is done like this. Nope. Where he can do this, he can do all these different things. Basically, you are trying to block Zato and Eddie at the same time, and that's a problem. The key to Zato is understanding that he also has an equally powerful lose condition. That is, in the event where he summons Eddie, and you do this, and Eddie's dead. That's a problem for Zato, because Zato now loses half of his kit. Now I have the bar to reset and refill Eddie immediately, so it's not that big a deal. But you'll notice Zato players should change their behavior dramatically once Eddie is either recharging or if he is dead. Basically, he's in trouble. He has to play on the defense and he has to wait for Eddie to return. Without this little helpful gremlin, well, he's in a lot of trouble. The important thing to understand about Eddie is, as long as he's not doing this, you can just do whatever you want to try and kill him. Like, any hit will just destroy him. Do not be afraid to use that. I will frequently also use YRCs to kill Eddie. I will use bursts occasionally to kill Eddie. I know that if I get rid of Eddie, it's my turn, and I can start going on the offensive and start deleting the Zato player. What it becomes is essentially recognizing the signs for when you can actually kill Eddie. A good time is actually during the send out for Drunkard's Shade. You'll see a lot of Zatos, for example, do this to send the Eddie out. If you just wait a second and just go for a quick 2P, you might be able to just snipe Eddie on the way out. You've got to be a little bit careful doing this because the smarter ones will, like, immediately go into a button. But you can generally catch him on the way out. You can also catch him, I believe, between the 2 punches here. So I have him set to do a 2P, and you can see he's just going to snipe Eddie between the 2 punches. God, he animates so well. It's such a beautiful animation. I love the animations in this game. We should do a tier list on animations at some point, because they're so good. Whoop. I want to talk about both of these characters at the same time, because both of them have similar game plans. They're definitely not the same game plan, but they have similarities in how they play. And they basically both just want to control neutral. That's how these characters work. Ram has just these big-ass buttons. This great little jump-in move here as well, like especially if you get the cross-up version of it. Like it's very difficult to deal with this move sometimes. And so Ram, yeah, she wants to control neutral with these big slash buttons, and they are very difficult to deal with for, well, obvious reasons. They're huge and they're disjointed as well, so you can't just whiff punish her very easily. Mei's not that dissimilar. She wants to control your movement using these big aerials, using some of these big grounded hits as well. And then, especially on the ground, she wants to make sure that you can't do it too much on the ground because, hey, look, she can control this horizontal space extremely well. In theory, she can also control vertical space quite well, but honestly, rather than using... I'm terrible at charge inputs, by the way. Right, she can technically control airspace using these dolphins, but honestly, she's going to want to do it with this instead. You'll frequently see Mei players just do this kind of behavior where they'll just like jump around and then maybe build some charge while they do, and then when they're on the ground they'll land and use it somehow. And this is kind of the position that a Mei player wants you to be in. They, similar to Sol, want to just corner you and press you out with these big buttons, making you guess and making you try and figure out what she's going to do next, trying to catch you, challenging her pressure in some manner or some respect. The difference between Sol and Mei, I would say, is that Mei's just a lot better at controlling a lot of space in the neutral, more so than even Sol is with his oppressive 6S button. Both of these characters also have the same weakness, however, and hopefully you can kind of get an idea of what it is pretty easily by the meme response of when they get knocked down. Right, every single Mei and Ram player has a habit of spamming reversal super, or at least that's kind of the meme, right? Oh, they get knocked down, they're going to reversal super out of everything, and part of that is sure that Morto Bato and this move as well both have incredibly good hitboxes, but it's also their only option for a real reversal, so they're going to take it because neither of these characters respond to pressure well and respond to Oki super well. Mei's slightly better at it, I would say, between the two of them. Mei has a few more fast buttons and tools to actually use to try and get out, like desperate dolphins and stuff like that can try and blow her out. But both of them have that same weakness, namely, you knock them down, they're in trouble. I'll also say Ram has one or two other losing conditions as well, namely if she throws her sword and you are nowhere near it. Especially a Ram with 0 swords. Ram's win condition is absolutely putting you in the corner as well. Like, once you're in the corner trying to block these swords, it's going to be a bad time for you. Right, she will get a wall break off this, she will get half your health bar or more, and you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Ram is absolutely the queen of corner pressure, and as a result, the fight should be a scramble for you, and like this is how you beat Ramlethals, is don't get cornered, forehead. I know it's a stupid sounding breakdown, but it literally is that simple of do everything you can, do everything in your power to get out of that cornered position. Generally with the low sword you can jump out, with the higher sword you can actually sprint out or just duck and like contest in neutral and try and do something with that. There's usually a bit of a rock paper scissors with the Ram trying to keep you challenged and keep you into the corner. Sometimes Rams will do just this into this, that will catch your jump out if you aren't careful, or they will basically do this, which is that they'll run forward and then try and challenge you with a kick or a low. Once you kind of get that that's the relationship happening, that's the interaction happening here, it becomes easier to plot out your escape. Namely that the Ram is going to be looking for you, trying to leave on the ground somehow, or trying to leave in the air somehow, and she is going to be challenging you in a way that befits that. And I guess in closing for this video, I don't want you to, think of this as a guide to all the different win and loss conditions in the game, but I want you to think of this as a way of framing the game in your head. And I think Potemkin is a great example of a character with some weaknesses and strengths that you need to be careful of. Giovanna might not actually be the best example to fight against him in this situation, but all Pot wants to do is this. Right? Lol, yeah, he just wants to pot buster you over and over and over again. That's what he really wants. Not necessarily. Pot wants you to be afraid of the Potemkin Buster, because when you're afraid of the Potemkin Buster, suddenly all of this becomes way more powerful. This and this become really strong, and you have all these different cool tools you can use to blow up your enemy and do a ton of damage. And sure, the Pot Buster is a shortcut to damage and is a lot of fun and powerful and makes you feel good, but it might not necessarily be his win condition. His win condition is just to get you blocking and to make you afraid of what he's going to do next. He wants you in a position where you are either just scrambling to constantly jump out of pressure, or that you are just hunkered down blocking constantly so that he can then go for stuff like the Potemkin Buster. But in terms of lose conditions, Pot's actually built into his character. Namely that as a grappler, well, he doesn't have a dash. I'm pressing the dash button, as you can see on the side of the screen, and nothing's happening. He doesn't have a dash forward. But he does have a move that sends him forward, if I can remember the button for it. It's a charge move, so I'm terrible at it. There we go. He can hammerfall his way forward. He can even break it. Because if you block the hammerfall, it's punishable. It's vulnerable on block. So sure, he can cross the screen with this, but if you block it, well, he's ruined. It does have a hit of armor on it, but you can also just hit him and then RC and it will break the armor every single time. He has Mega Fist for coming forwards, but if you block the forward one, he loses his turn, and if he's close enough, will be punished for it. You can punish him out of this. He also just is completely vulnerable in the air while doing that. He's a huge body, so just trying to cross the screen while pressing buttons is always a bit risky for him, and he's generally a little bit cursed. The other option being, as I look through all his buttons, his other option being, of course, slide head into hammerfall. But slide head, even if it hits, doesn't do any damage, leaves him very vulnerable as well. Like, this is a big commitment move for no damage and a knockdown, but it gets him in. So, hey, you'll see Potemkins use this move quite a lot. But when you understand that his movement options are cursed, like they all have some horrible monkey's paw associated sort of horror tied to them, in that they're punishable or they're unsafe in different ways, you start to understand more that, well, Potemkin wants to get in, but it's difficult for him. If you make sure to punish things like Mega Fist, if you don't give him free slide heads, if you make sure to account for stuff like the hammerfall and block it when he tries to use it, or RC it if he comes running at you, suddenly the Pot's in a really difficult place. On top of just having no invulnerable reversals except for the super, he's in a difficult position. Now don't get me wrong, knowing this isn't going to suddenly turn you into a god, knowing this isn't going to win you the game, but it hopefully will take the sting out of some of the situations where the opponent is extremely strong and your character might feel weak. Because when you know to look for the openings, when you know to look for, this character doesn't seem to be able to do much at this situation, that's when you start realizing, wow, I need to burn resources to hold on to this situation. That's when you start setting up your game plan more and more to force the situations where your character is strong, and that's really important to think about. In the comments below, let me know what your character is, who you play, and what their win or losing conditions are. I'd be curious to hear, especially from people like Faust players, for example, whose win conditions might be lol, pick Sol. But I'm curious to actually hear what you think your win conditions are, and have you thought about this at all, and also maybe what your losing conditions are and how you try to escape from those losing conditions. Some characters it's more obvious than others, some characters that's intentionally so. Otherwise, I've been Josh, one by Smoke's Money, and I'll see you on the next one. Toodaloo.